Good morning, grade 5s and 6s. This was going to be a short video. I just want to review a couple concepts. So the first one is I want to review writing percents as fractions. So let's say you have 17 out of 100. What is that percent? That's 17% because it's a 17 on top of 100. What if you have 5 over 100? Well, that's 5% because you have a 5 over 100. Okay, now what if you have 21% and you want to turn that into a fraction? That's 21 over 100. Ta-da! Simple as that. Or what if you have 3%? That's 3 over 100. Really simple. This isn't complicated. Remember, everything is based out of 100. Okay, this is the key thing here that we were talking about. Everything is based on 100. That means if you happen to have something that doesn't have 100 underneath, for example, let's say you have 1 out of 20, before you can make a percent, you've got to write 100 on the bottom. How did we get there? That's times 5. So this is times 5, 5 out of 100. So 1/20th is actually 5%. See that? Okay. 1/20th is the same thing as 5 over 100, so it's 5%. It's not 1%. Why isn't it 1%? Because this number at the bottom here isn't 100. And in order to have a percent, it has to be out of 100. I mean, this is so simple. It's so basic. It's the key to everything here. And yet, some of you, despite the fact that I'm jumping up and down and shouting this right now, you're going to forget to do this. Percents have to be out of 100. If it's not 100 on the bottom, you can't make it a percent in the way I'm showing you. It is possible to make it a percent. I don't want to lie to you and tell you it's not, but you don't do it this way. You have no reason to turn something into a percent in any other way other than what I'm showing you now. Next year, grade 6s, you'll learn other ways to make percents, but this year, you got to put it out of 100, okay? It's that simple. It's got to be out of 100. Don't worry about anything else, okay? So here then, finding equivalent fractions, that's what this leads into. That's an equivalent fraction, right? Now there's some key ones here that work with 100. So if you see 20 on the bottom, that means you have to times by 5 because 20 times 5 equals 100. If you see 25 on the bottom, then you have to times by 4 because 25 times 4 equals 100. If you see 10 on the bottom, then you have to times by 10 because 10 times 10 equals 100. See how I'm getting 100 on the bottom on all of those? So these are all standard numbers. 20, 25, 10, you'll see those on the bottom of fractions a lot. What about if you see the number 50 on the bottom? Well, then you have to times by 2 because 50 times 2 equals 100. They're pretty standard. These are all really, really common ones. You might see some others, like you might see 5 on the bottom. That's actually just the same thing here. You see 20 times 5, so 5 times 20. It's the same thing, just backwards. Okay? So the same thing as if you see a 4 on the bottom, then you know you have to times by 25. If you see a 2 on the bottom, you know you have to times by 50. Yeah? All right, so that's basically all the review I have to do for that. Just quick some mentions about your workbook pages. All right, label 100% on each line segment. Remember, we want to make all of these divisions about the same. So this distance needs to be the same as this distance. Okay, so if this is 0 to 20, then this would be 0 to 40. See that? Then we're going to make the next one about the same distance again. You see how that's the same? It looks the same. So now when we look at that, that's the same. So 20, 40, 60. See how that goes? Okay. This one here is different. We're not going to go to 10, 40, 60. Now we have a different pattern. We're going 10, so then it would be 20, 30, 40, etc. Okay. This, by the way, is the grade 5 work. Right here, grade 5, you can see we've got pages 8 and 9. So it's just a continuation from your previous work. Here, this is really easy. This is just a continuation, use a percent sign. Okay, make sure you have a percent sign. So for example, this is 7% because it's 7 over 100. That's based on what we talked about in class earlier on in this lecture. Okay, this one right here, make sure you count. Look at how many little squares are being taken up. Okay. That's what they want here. They want the number of squares, and then they want what that is as a percent. Now down here, you have to read carefully. Remember, percent is always out of 100, always. So we look at this right here. We have 72 and 28. Well, what happens if we add 72 and 28? If we add them together, we get 100. Oh, good. What a relief. So girls are 28 out of 100, and boys are 72 out of 100. How come we have 100? Because 100 is all of them, boys and girls together. So when you answer these questions here, pay attention to that, okay? Now, grade sixes, this is your work right here. This first page should be really easy for you. Just pay attention. Make sure you're paying attention. This is a 5, not a 50. That's not 50. So don't act like it's 50, act like it's 5. Okay. Now, this one is one we haven't talked about, but it's actually really simple, okay? This is more than 100%. Now, I know I told you in a previous lecture that more than 100% is kind of funny, because how do you have more than everything? But we actually do that in maths. So how do we have this? Well, it's just 125. It's not hard. Same thing, okay? All right. Now down here, this is an estimate, all right? So you don't have to be exactly right, but you have to be close. Now this right here, this is what I'm talking about. Remember, in order to get a percent, you have to make it out of 100. So in this case, we go from 10 to 100, which is times 10. So we go from 6 to 100, so we go times 10 on the top as well. So we get 60 up here, so then the percent is 60%. Don't forget your percent sign. And that's what they want you to do for all of that, and that's what they want you to do for all of this. You can see that it's a 50 at the bottom. That's not good enough. We have to have 100 on the bottom, right? Which means we went times 2. 39 times 2 is 78. So the percent is 78. This is not 39%. Don't write 39%. Why isn't it 39%? Because the bottom number here is not 100. So we cannot use this top number just the way it is. We have to fix it. Okay? So Stephanie gets 78% on her geography quiz. She does not get 23% on her science quiz. Again, what do we have to do? We've got to get 100 on the bottom, which means that's times 4. So 23 times 4. I actually don't know that one off the top of my head. Let's see. 2 times 4 is 8. It's 92%. So she gets 92% on that. I have done the first one for you. I expect all of you to get this right now, because I know that you didn't just stop this video or just didn't ignore this video. I know you watched it. Now you see what you're supposed to do here, and all of you are going to do this perfectly. There are a few of you in this class who consistently get more than 50% of the work wrong on your practices. And that's partly because even though you watch my videos, you don't really listen. You don't look at what I'm doing and think about it and make it make sense. You're just like, okay, that's what the teacher said. And then as soon as you open your workbook, you're like, I don't know what the teacher said. I guess I'll just guess. There's no guessing necessary here. Just do the work exactly the way I've shown you how to do it. Okay? All right. Have fun with this work.